Good morning, everybody. It's Marty, the JavaScript party. No ret this morning. It is Tuesday, so my dogs are likely to be over soon. My son's dogs, and then it just like, oh, okay, it just becomes absolute chaos. So yesterday, I kind of ran into an issue that was weird. Now that I look at it, I'm trying to kind of figure out. So we basically created this current route in this service. And what it's returning right now, I believe, is a like this part, this segment of the table, of the URL of the route. So this up here is called the route, um, and um, we want to go to, I think it's entities, no, data entities, right? So if I go to data entities, this is a bit weird because it reloads the whole page. We create our route, right? And then we also wanted to be able to go to ST animation. Dash is okay. Yeah, animation, just like that. That's how we want to go. What this guy right here is doing, and I learned this yesterday, right? So what this guy right here is doing is it's returning data, if I remember correctly, um, instead of animation. So it's giving this segment, which is fine. I think that's perfectly fine. Now, my first natural instinct, as someone who's been coding for a long time, is instead of returning like this layout time, which is just a string, it's just limited string. It could be custom tabular updated data. Um, instead of returning a string, it could return like an object, right? That has that as one of the attributes, and then also then add this last piece as a different attribute in the object. And that is, to me, there's like from a pure like computing perspective, um, there's that is 100% logically and fine. Yeah, totally. There's no gaps in that logic. But from a JavaScript specific perspective, you always have to keep in mind that JavaScript treats primitives different than objects. So, and arrays are just a kind of object. There's only like two kinds of things in JavaScript, is my understanding. There's primitives and there's objects. And functions in JavaScript, unlike a lot of other languages, in JavaScript, a function is an object. Like, so everything's either a primitive or an object. And if it's a primitive, then JavaScript behaves one way, manages it a whole different way than it manages it as an object, which like then on the coding side of things changes the way things work really, really dramatically. And so things that will work perfectly when you're just emitting or transmitting or communicating primitives will just totally quit working often will quit working when you convert it to objects. So that logic does, well, that's a good computing logic of, hey, I just changed it from a string to an object, and just go on keep going. Just doesn't work in JavaScript. It may work in other languages or whatever, but it doesn't work in JavaScript. And that's because JavaScript, when you say, hey, I had hello, last time I said hello, but this time I'm saying world. It sees that as two different things, two different strings, two different primitive objects, but two different primitive entities, I guess. But if you say I have an object and inside of it I have a greeting, and then the greeting right now is hello, and now I'm changing the greeting to world. All, JavaScript goes just to see, is it a different object. It doesn't check to see if the data inside the object is different. which gives it a lot, gives them a lot of like. There's a lot of advantages that come with that, but now I need to do this. So basically, yesterday I tried to do something and it just didn't work, and I don't know why. So I'm gonna try a different route, take a different route. That's why I'm glad I had a night to think about it. One of the very first things I thought of, um, one of the very, very first thing I thought of was to make this an object, and I realized that that comes with other problems that I don't want to deal with. Okay, so then um, I think all I want to do is just copy the whole thing. I don't know why, like yesterday, the approach I took didn't work. Current route type. I'm always going to assume that that's a type. Even if I'm in a different route, like even if I'm in the custom route, if there's another slash thing in the route, I guess I'll always assume that I'm hoping that um, type always makes sense. Maybe not. Okay, so that was fun, right? And so instead of a layout type, though, I want to return. I think it was. Did I comment to that? An ST types instead of layout type. So I think things will break when I change this to ST type, and that's because down here I don't. And so that makes sense. And then, okay, so ST type doesn't work. It is weird that this is breaking, but maybe it's because this needs to be an actual ST type. So, and then ST type doesn't necessarily work. It's not always going to be an animation. So I'm going to have to create probably a new kind of. So I don't know why this is broken. It's weird because, like, okay, so current route type to signal, and it actually says ST types. It's saying that it could be a layout type. I don't know why. So if I change, I wonder if I change this to any. So this is weird. Why does it think it needs to be a layout type? That's what's so strange about the whole thing. It's like, it's like, it's weird. Oh, string. Yeah, because actually what I was saying doesn't work. It's string. I don't know why this would need to be custom, but F in this one. That's got to be some kind of weird bug in Angular. I mean, yeah, in the IDE in Visual Studio, something's giving it a weird thing. See, this is weird. Like initial, wait, layout. Why does it think it needs to be a layout type? Oh, Okay, I see. Is it because this? Get route. Oh, because get route, yeah, turns. Okay, that okay. Woo, that was weird. Okay, so we did learn it probably needs to be like while it makes sense for it to be okay. I guess for now we'll just change it to ST animation. So the problem was the get route returns the layout type. We need to add another thing called like get type from route. Get type from route. Which takes a URL string and it returns an ST type. And we're going to have it return ST dash animation. Reset all visualization. We need to see what that does. Get type route. It's not route. Route. Ooh. I think this will solve that issue. There we go. There we go. All right. What does reset all visualization components do? And honestly, I guess since it's getting whatever it's doing is getting called here, and this is getting called anytime the navigation ends, we probably don't. Whatever it does, we don't need to do it again. It's just we call it twice, which should be fine. Call it twice, but okay. So we're saying, hey, if the route changes, set the visual component to one, and then it's just like to -1, and then it's just like, oh, and then this also sets it. So I don't think we need to do it again. We only need to do it once. But the problem is, I guess if something were to ever change, need to call again, no need to call again. Is always called for the current route. What's that called? RxJS reactive subscription. So hopefully, like if something changes in the future, I won't need to worry about that. All right, so I won't need to worry about like let's say at some point we were like, oh, we're gonna change the way this is done. At least we have a chance of remembering. All right, so now I believe this will not get called unless something listens for it. So type. What's the name of this thing? This is happening inside. It's like, it's kind of crazy because, well, I guess the basic, it's like going to cause this to get called twice, which may be a bit of, which is definitely a bit of a waste, but it like is easier to code and easier to make sense of it. Which is st type. St types. Go to this current service. Which right now is always going to be animation. Just going to do this console log. It's going to be route type. And I will tell you at this point, I don't even remember what the heck we're trying to work on because I'm so deep into this. So we are getting the right type back, but let's see if we hit. The idea is that, like, if we were to say st scene up here, we would get st scene back. But we should just get st animation because I think. See, it still says st animation because that's all we return. Right? We have that function that we created over here. So we're just defaulting it to st animation. But this is going to basically take I say let st type is of type st types, and it's equal to, we're just defaulting to st animation. I don't know if this is going to be the right way to do this in the future. It may, like, literally sometimes you'll see some kind of code like this just make it all the way like through to the end of the project, because it's never a problem. Sometimes it ends up being a problem having to do it. So at this point, we're still going to see what we're still going to see st animation because that's what we do. So we're going to take our segments, and we are going to assume that the very last segment, that if we do have a segment, that the last segment is the actual type. Probably not always accurate, but for now, we'll just assume last segment is st. That is absolutely not going to always be true, but length is greater than 0. St types is equal to segments dot pop. I believe pop gets the last one. Never remember off the top. And then we're going to say that, just take our word for it, which is absolutely going to be true. Alright, this is absolutely going to be false. Okay, this will eventually will sometimes this won't be st. Alright, so now let's see what st scene. Bye bye. So we got one when it was initialized. and then we got one, and it was like the router value was custom, which was wrong, and the ST type was wrong. But then we got router value is equal to data STC. Something back. Now, ST animation is the type. So that is now correct. We are now getting the right ST type. So now it's like, okay, so we solved the problem. What were we even working on? And that, it took 100% of CPU capacity to get that little task done. Now it's like, okay, the task is done. Now it's like time to reset and figure out, okay, what is in fact the next task. Um, I do not think, I don't know how I ever learned to do that. I really don't.
I don't really get how that, like, that was some, whatever that behavior was, I've been doing since I was a teenager, right? So I'm almost 60, so obviously that was over 40 years ago. I do not remember the process at which I learned to sort of finish a task and then start rebuilding from scratch again to determine what the next task is. But what is in fact the next task? And the next task is actually to, when I hit this and I add a viz, I should only be seeing the ones that are of this kind, where the type is that kind, right? So, and if I remember correctly, I thought maybe not. I could have sworn we had set aside some, like another filter. Yeah, apply. Oh yeah, apply router filter, and I'm going to change that to router type. So we might end up with other types of ST. And the reality is right now we're just saying the very last one is, but if there was actually going to be another one, it would probably be here, and then all that code that we just wrote is going to be incorrect. It'll have a bug, and we'll have to fix it. And I would have absolutely, before Cypress, been terrified that at some point down the road, I'm going to, like, it would actually add a lot of cognitive load and stress, knowing that in the future I'm going to um, end up with what am I trying to say? I'm going to end up with oh, in the future I'm going to end up just getting, like, being deep into something like I just was, and then breaking this inadvertently. But I know I can write an end-to-end test that will lock that in. And so in the future, if I change something and then it breaks the end-to-end test, I'll be like, oh crap, oh, now I remember. So now we aren't passing a router. We're actually taking a router value. We're actually getting the I'm going to change this to route ST type. And then I'm going to pass that into here. I'm going to pass this. I'm going to print that. And then I'm going to change this to an ST types here. And that will be good because if I ever decide, I'm changing the way this works and I'm going to start pumping out other stuff, this will break. So this is an example of something that, like, in 1998, I would have been like, ooh, this is going to be hard. We're This was the kind of thing that was breaking. Like, whenever I worked on code, it would be like, oh, once you hit like 10,000 lines, everything just falls apart because of things like this. But now we're able to lock in what it is. What it is. Okay, so we're going to do something along this value. Mm. So this is kind of a bummer because This has this kind of concept of filter. So the data source has a filter, and then that's how it is. But so I guess here we actually, with this one, we actually want to remove things from the table records, right? Like the actual table records, the data source records themselves. So this data, table source data, is equal to table records, but we actually want to change. Now I'm wondering if the order matters over here. I don't think it does. Should not matter that I set the value. And then let's see. Yeah, everything works fine. I didn't think that would make a difference. Sometimes, you'll find out that it does, but it doesn't. But basically, so the next step is we need to remove. So actually, so I don't want this table records to change. So I want this table records to have everything in it. I want filtered table records to end up being, okay. So actually what I think I want to do is actually send it the table records to this dot table records. And then instead of this Boolean, I want to return the filtered records. So I want this table records to stay as it is. Um, but I want it to, but I want to remove those. Okay, so, and what is a table record? So this returns that. I think that, so this, and this will be a new one. I don't think it won't be a reference. So I don't want it to be a reference anyways. All right, so I should be able to. So basically, I don't even know. I think if I did this recurrence, I would actually be returning its own instance. But actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a const filtered records equals like that, and then I'm going to return filtered records. And then I think what I'm going to do is, yeah, let's call this filtered records. And then eventually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assign, instead of assigning that, I'm going to assign filtered records. All right. Anyways, got to go. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Happy coding. Bye.